actually one more thing before we leave each other that I forgot to mention. It's actually this one. These two rows, they are the most important and they clarify actually everything. So those are in aggregate the weights assigned to goods and services, right? And GDP also is the sum, the overall weight, the sum of transaction, monetary terms of all goods and services which are bought and sold, produced and sold into the overall aggregate economy. But anyway, here we are with the CPI weight index basket, and you can see in 2008 the weight assigned to all goods measured was 547, the weight assigned to all services was 453. If you sum the two, okay, just I can do sum these two and it should be 1,000. Okay, now if we go fast forward, okay, we keep these two highlighted. Come on. Okay, that's the simplest thing to see. You can all see that the weight assigned to all goods, okay, slowly it goes up after 2008, and then it starts dialing down after 2012. Okay, it goes down and down and down, then you go up, and then at the same time you have a shift around for all services. Okay, the weights that measures the importance or the relevance of all services for the consumer price index. And at the end of the day, we are here that from 2024, 2024 is the first year, okay, 2024, 2025, that all services, now they have a higher weight compared to all goods. So, is this a method to change around things? Probably. You see, all goods weight is 482. All services is 518. So the relevance of services or prices of services for the consumer price index, it's 51.8% for services is the weight and 48.2% for goods. I think this sums up pretty much why prices keep going up of ordinary goods, but inflation, the consumer price index, seems to be on a percentage base decreasing month on month or quarter on quarter. It's actually because in aggregate you can all see that since 2024-2025 there has been a paradigm shift, whether now services weight more than goods in aggregate. All services, for God's sake, come on, yeah, all services here, they weight more than goods. Okay, so perhaps this is the reason why. Let me zoom out. So all services 518, so 51.8% weight for consumer price index. All goods 48.2%. So actually, in statistical terms, consumer price index assigns more weight to services prices rather than to goods prices. That's the main reason why consumer price index on a relative percentage change, it seems to be quote unquote okay, while instead actual retail prices, they keep going up. So that's why, in simple terms, demonstrated proof of concept why ordinary Brits, they are right, and they know that doing shopping is unaffordable, it's less and less affordable. So why it doesn't match up the narrative that they get from mass media? That's because in the statistical numbers, services, they have a larger weight than actual goods. The basic items that you buy in any store, they are less important than services for the consumer price index. That's how they manage to make it appear better than actually it is in real terms. But to be precise, to be exact, consumer price index, it's not a measure of the cost of living, but a shift of also, it measures, again, the same thing, it measures the change in prices, but it measures also the change in consumer habit. So the less weight assigned to goods, it means that actually it's true that ordinary people, they are able to spend less on goods, or they are spending less on goods. Some change in consumer habit perhaps has happened into the overall socio-economic fabric structure of Britain, of the UK economy, and so that can justify this thing. But it's evident to see. Now I'll zoom in, okay, so that we go here. The weights have shifted around. Plus 50% services, 48% goods. So services prices, they are more relevant than goods prices. Okay? Question number 5, please. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Economic, all about economics and finance. So, why we see that prices can keep rising and any item is expensive, or if we have a night out and I don't know, a cocktail or any other thing that we pay for is very expensive, and at the same time we see that the headline inflation is decreasing. CPI was 3.6%, now it's 3%. Why this happens? So why there is this mismatch between what is the headline rate of inflation and what is the real cost for ordinary consumers, for ordinary people. There are a few things. So CPI, the Consumer Price Index, or RPI, Retail Price Index, or CPIH, and inflation basket, it's a measure of the consumer habits. And yes, it's an index, so it's a basket that measures all the goods and services that are in the economy. And the index, the CPI index, as I'm sharing with you with the screen, it's composed of weights. So for each and every item that is measured in the CPI index every month with statistical samples, there is a weight assigned. So every weight is scaled to 1,000 points. And so according to the weight that is assigned to every item, which can be bread, rice, flour, meat, or theater tickets, or beer, or wine, every item, even especially services, for example, if you go financial services, insurance, or I don't know, phone bills, whatsoever, travel services, and that sort of stuff. So for each and every item, and there are loads of items, there is a weight that is assigned. So the weight is assigned by the ONS or any institutional office that is in charge of measuring or keeping the database of the national economy statistics. Can be the ONS, or it can be the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the United States. It can be Istat for Italy, and so forth, or it can be Eurostat, that kind of stuff. So the general method is that the weight that is assigned to every item, it varies, it's changed according to spending habits of consumers. So that's why the first reason for which CPI or RPI, they don't really reflect the cost of living, is that weights in the index, they are changed. So I know that the first thought would be, okay, they are fiddling with these things. Perchance, it could be. Yes, not that they are fiddling, but the CPI index, it's a basket, and it measures somewhat the consumer habit, but it's not a real measure of the cost of living. Okay, so to have a statistical precise measure of the cost of living, we need to see what is the purchasing power. So we want to know how, for example, how wages have grown with inflation. But if we are measuring inflation approximately not exactly as is the cost of living, then we will always have this mismatch, this hiatus between what is the real experience of ordinary citizens and what are the statistical measures. That's why there's always this discrepancy between the two things. And if we, in fact, I stumbled upon the Consumer Price Index weight statistical table, and I had to spend a bit of time, because I found that actually some weights have been the weights that always been revised. But for example, we have, if you take the column K, is the year 2015, and the CPI index weights, it's on 1,000 points, and it's the base year is 2015. Okay, now if we take this is going to be very, very, very simple. If we take the row with bread and cereals, or bread, okay, let's take it both. What? Okay, so we are K here, K it's here, okay, K it's here. I know the screen is not the best thing. Probably I'm going to zoom in a little bit, okay, so that we see clearly a little bit. Okay, so we are here, those are the weights. Okay, if we go fast forward, we see that the weights are more or less unchanged, but bread and cereals, the weight in 2015 was 16, now it's 17.9, so it's 17.9. So there is a higher weight of bread and cereals, which tends to reflect the consumer habit and the perhaps the rate of change of the price of the item that it's measured, and it's added in aggregate to the overall CPI index. But what is interesting is that if on the other end, now if we take, okay, no, bread it's here, okay, I was on the wrong row, okay, yeah, so bread 3.52 was the weight was in 2015, today is 4.14. Okay, so if we go and see the bread price, we can see that here at the start of 2015 was 102 pence, so it was a pound. Now it's £1.40. So there is a change in price, or average bread price. Okay, no, it doesn't matter. So average bread price, white loaf, which is a quality of bread. It was £1 in 2015. Today it's £1.40, the average price. So it's somewhat around 40%, a little less than 40%, between 30 and 40% price increase. Okay, and so this 40% cost added to the average price of bread, it's not really reflected, probably fully reflected, in the weight that it's assigned to bread in the CPI index. Okay, although we see that the weight in 2015, the base year, was 3.52, today it's 4.14. So the weight has been shifted up. So there is more relevance into the inflation basket for the overall inflation headline for bread. But the real life price increase is from £1 here to £1.40. Okay, so it's more or less 40%. Meanwhile, the price goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay, so another silly thing is that any ordinary person can actually understand that to have inflation at 2% fixed, or like around the average of 2%, it's actually very, very difficult. I think it's a semantic fraud, because the price is moving all the time. Okay, retail prices, they change very frequently, so you cannot have a fixed target all the time. Okay, so I think it's a flawed assumption, which it will never work. Okay, it's just I don't agree with this concept. So if we take meat, okay, meat or beef and veal, okay, we see that the overall weight for the meat index was 22, today is 19, okay, and for meat and veal was 2.86, and today is 2.99. So for the overall, for the whole meat section, okay, in the Sainsbury's and the supermarket, the starting weight was 22, today it's 19.1. And so you hear, for example, you now you can put the dots together. You have all this mass media propaganda saying, okay, no, people, the ordinary consumers, they are shifting habits. They don't want to eat so much meat because it's not healthy. There are people who are vegan, they are vegetarian. No gluten, gluten-free. You know, you go to you book a table in a restaurant, and it's like going to an hospital, an hospital mensa. One is gluten-free, the other is vegan, the other is vegetarian, the other is only beetroot, the other is only orange juice, the other it doesn't touch lettuce because it has a particular feeling. All that kind of stuff. So as it happens, meat, the weight of meat in the CPI index, it has been decreased, and eventually this would does reflect more the consumer habit, so perhaps the volume of meat purchases made by consumers rather than the price. Because if we go and see, no, that's CPI, okay, that is exactly the CPI weights meat. You can see that from the starting point, from where the it was statistically measured, you see that the weight assigned to meat has been decreasing. But if you go and see that's the percentage change of beef, you see how beef prices on a percentage basis have soared like 30%, okay, in 2024, 2025, okay. The average price of beef, which is domestically produced in the UK, starting from 2015, okay, it was here, it was £15 or something like that. Let's take the point exactly. Yeah, it was £16.38. Today it's £18.90. Okay, so we've gone from 16.40 to 18.90, which is £2.50 jump. Okay, if we go and see, this is not exactly the same, but basically, if we take the overall for beef, the percentage change of beef, it's 30% jump between November 2020, October 2024, basically the end of 2024, and the end of 2025. So in 1 year, beef prices have gone up like 28%. But on the same level, the weight assigned to meat has decreased, has been fiddled, shifted, or dialed down, which means that when the headline inflation number pops up, it does not reflect the fact that beef prices have increased. So buying meat for any ordinary consumer in Britain, I don't like consumer, for any ordinary citizen or ordinary any person who lives in Britain, it's more expensive, which means it's unaffordable. It becomes steadily more unaffordable, okay? But at the same time, you say, okay, if I go to the pub and I want to buy a burger, now it costs me 10 quid. What the heck is going on? Because actually the price of producing beef, which is produced domestically in the UK, the end price it has gone from 16 quid 40 to 18 quid 90. It's a jump of £2.50. Now, a rough rule of thumb, if we start for 16.40, 10% is £1.60, so we are north of 10% plus cost, yeah, which has added up from 2015 to 2025 or 2026. Okay, so 10% in 10 years, or perhaps 20% in 10 years, it's 2% per year. Now I'm doing really some rough calculation, which are not, but the main thing is that if I see the price of 10 years ago and I see the price now, the price is higher. And then why I keep seeing that on the CPI headline inflation data, inflation on a percentage change is going down, even if I see that the RPI percentage change of beef on a 12 months basis, we have a 28% jump from 2024 and 2025, because the weights that are utilized for the overall CPI inflation basket, they are changed all the time. As meat become more expensive or unaffordable, okay, CPI, the weight assigned to the CPI index, they are changed, and they reflect the consumer habit. So meat becomes more unaffordable. People, they spend less on beef. They try to buy more chicken or eggs, or a substitute. It can be they become vegetarian, so they are forced to consume more beans or lentils, or a substitute or alternative substitute products. Because in microeconomics we have demand elasticity. It depends if there is if the consumer can replace meat with another product. So I want to replace meat with the vegetarian diet, and so I will consume more lentils or beans, which have the same nutritional intake of protein, which can be meat, but then we go into another scientific field, which is nutrition, and I'm not an expert, so I will keep my mouth shut. But the end result is that in 2015 the weight assigned to meat was 22. Now it's 19, so the weight on 1,000 points has decreased by 3 points, which perhaps reflects consumer habit. So meat is less affordable, so ordinary people, they have less purchasing power in consuming meat, and so the weight assigned into the CPI index is changed, is shifted down. So that's why this is a little trick, like for example, okay, beef, the starting weight was 2.86 in 2015, and now it's 2.99. But we just saw that the price of British beef, okay, was £16.40 in 2015, and it's £18.90 in 2026. So how come that I have 10-20% increase in the price and the weight goes from 2.86 to 2.99? It's shifted only by 0 point something, okay, when I have a 20% increase in the actual retail price in the store, right? And this perhaps it's made to reflect the fact that people actually they can afford less meat. They are buying less meat, less beef, and they are buying more chicken or eggs, or they are becoming vegetarian. And so you can put all the dots together and understand why, okay, you need to change your diet, you need to become vegetarian, you need to consume more lentils or beans or alternative source of proteins. That's why the synthetic protein market, it has exploded. On the other hand, you have people who consume kilos of powder protein, people who do sports, who go to the gym. That's because the actual price of meat, for example, but also bread, it has increased. And then we keep seeing that now CPI is decreasing, but it reflects the change in the weight. But the change in the weight does not measure only the change of price, it measures the consumer habit. So how much or how many times, how much in aggregate, and how many millions of transactions we have for each and every item, or for certain items. So if you have lower volume, it means that people, they are buying less of meat because it's less affordable, or it's unaffordable. Okay, so the headline inflation measure, it can be a bit misleading, because you say, okay, I go to the pub and now I pay £10 for a pint, but you show up on the custards and the inflation is 3%. That doesn't make sense. That's because the weights of the inflation index, they are shifted around, and when they're shifted around, then you can statistically measure the same thing with a different result. So we cannot believe the official statistics. No. The CPI index reflects two things: the change in price, but crucially, it reflects the consumer habit. So if something is unaffordable, and in real life you are spending less on going out with friends because you cannot afford a beer, that is reflected in the weight assigned to beer, because if you are consuming less beer, that is more unaffordable, so the consumer habit is for less consumption of that thing. So the CPI index as a basket would assign a lower weight to beer because you are consuming less beer, which does not reflect, on the other side, the fact that price has gone up. So there are two components they are a bit of an oxymoron. They are in opposition with each other, because price go up, but the consumer habit may change. So CPI, it has the index, the weight assigned, it has to keep together the two things. Okay, so that's a very simple thing, and I'm sure I have not exhausted the whole picture of how and why. We can see that the statistical measure does not really reflect the cost of living. And that's because there are weights assigned to every item. Now, if we see, that's the table of weights. If we go down, down and down and down and down, we have 365 rows. There are some spaces and stuff like that. So it's plus 320 or items which are into the inflation, the CPI data. And so for each and every item, the overall index, it sums up to 1,000 points, okay, the base start. And then all the weights at the final period, okay, if we shift dial up here, we are 2026, okay, and all the weights, they are here. We start from 1,000, and then we see basically the line by line, row by row, which item by item, food, alcohol, okay. So, okay, now that we have this one, okay, we can see in aggregate for every sector of the economy or every category that goes into the overall index, how the weights have changed, okay. So foods, okay, so here it starts from 2008, so we don't know what happened before, but food and non-alcoholic beverages, the starting point was 109, the weight. Now you go fast forward, you see this number changing, okay, you see this number changing, 118, it was 110 in 2015, now we are in 2026, it's 109 and 60. So you cannot possibly say that the price of a pint in 2026, if I take it literally, the value of the index, now it's smaller than 2015, okay, 110 or 109 and 60, okay. Nobody would accept the fact that the price of a pint or any food and any food and non-alcoholic beverage, nobody would accept that the price of any item, which is food and non-alcoholic beverages, sorry for the mix-up, it's the same as 2015. 2015 was 110, 2026 is 109.60. It's even lower. So nobody can accept the fact that the weight for food and non-alcoholic beverage in the overall index, CPI index, it's actually smaller than 2015. So that must reflect the fact that the consumer habit has changed, and perhaps people go to the Aldi's, to the superstore, to Tesco's or Sainsbury's, and then they spend 100 quid, 50 pounds, and they say, I come out with less items, because you can afford less volume of goods, because actually prices are up, but the volume, the amount of things that you bring home, it's less. But you see here, it's very, very easy to understand. I don't need to explain anything to anyone, okay. That's 2015, the base year. Now we put it here, bigger, okay. The weight assigned to food and non-alcoholic beverage was 110. Now, if we take this one, make it bigger and larger, the weight for the same items, so the importance for the overall inflation measure, consumer prices, it's 109.60. It's even lower, slightly less. So I can tweak around this thing. Say, okay, no worries. Prices are going up, but inflation is going up. So how? How now, you brown cow? So that's the thing. That's the weight that are utilized to do this thing, that are shifted around, because you see food and alcohol was 115 in 2022 or 114 in 2021, okay. It was 99 in 2020, or it was more or less the same, okay. 103 and 102, that does not reflect, I don't know how they did this. You can see that every year the weights of these items, they are changed. So there is no fixed weight assigned when they do the CPI. So it's we are getting into the camp of relatively measuring something. Okay, so this should eventually open the eyes of ordinary consumers, so that they can understand why prices keep going up. And I've lost my table. Okay, here we have it. Prices keep going up, but then they say, okay, no, CPI, it's fine, don't worry, prices are going down, we have succeeded in bringing inflation down, or so forth and so on. it's way easier to assign different weights, lower weights, and at the end of the day, all right, you can measure inflation in a different way, and you achieve a different, you achieve the result that you want to achieve. Now, let's say transport, right? If you take HGV or van drivers, hauliers, and all those big lorries that go up and down, I tell you, now if I have to fill up the tank because of the Strait of Hormuz, right? The Strait of Hormuz, and to filling up the tank cost me 200-300 quid, and before with 100, well, rather before with 100 plus pound I could fill up the tank. Now in 2015 the weight of transport, the cost of transport 149, 2026 141, so they shaved off 8 points of this. Okay, so that's how, in my humble address, it seems that consumer price index, it's shaving off some percentages, but you say, okay, well, prices keep going up. What's going on? That's what's going on, right? That's actually what's going on. They tweak around the weights, but that happens every year. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which in. Yeah, it doesn't matter which in playing with the numbers. They shift around the weight, and then they can come up with any CPI that they like. Of course, they cannot do some crazy thing, but end of the day, the CP, the consumer price index, it reflects the price, it measures the change in price, but it measures also the change in consumer habit. So when consumers, they are spending less of an item because actually the price has gone up, so it's less affordable, then the CPI, the consumer price index weights that in aggregate make the 1,000-point basket, the weight is shifted down because consumers, they are spending less on that item. But that actually reflects the fact that the price has gone up and the affordability is less affordable, so there is less consumer spending. Okay, so I think I can stop here, and I will keep wingling and moaning and mumbling about this thing and checking out catch number 4, please.